3 or 4 things in the world that make you happy. Do you have a family? If you do, if there are people that love you in your household, the odds are really high that you're happy. If your family's broken, the odds are really low that you're happy. Number 2, do you have any friends? And by that I mean real friends. People who, that when you suffer, they hurt. And when you're happy, they're happy. They don't choose to be happy, they just love you. There's an expansive sense of their self that includes you. Do you have meaningful work? In the data, by far the most clear determining factor of whether or not people are happy in life is when you leave the house on Monday morning and you're going to work. Not do you make a lot of money, not is it stressful, not do your fingers or your knees bleed or your ankles or your back ache. Those things are important, but not really. What matters is, do you believe that there's somebody in the world that needs you, that benefits from the work that you do? And fourth, do you have a theological framework to make sense of death and suffering? Do you have faith? Do you have family? Do you have friends? Do you have work? Here's what's happening right now in our country. Work is getting shorter, intermediating institutions are shrinking, and Americans are really lonely. Really lonely. If you look at the data, as recently as 1990, the average American had almost 3.5 friends. People that actually felt their pain and shared their pleasure. Today, the average American has about 1.8 friends, an almost halving in about 25 years. 40% of Americans have no one in whom they confide. Almost 40% of people have nobody that they talk about big things with. Nobody that they think feels their pain or feels their pleasure with them. Here's my thesis for you. If we're going to be good Republicans, you first have to be great Americans. You can't possibly be a good Republican if you don't believe a whole bunch of things are way more important than being a Republican. I'm a dad, and I'm a husband, and I'm a Christian, and I'm a Nebraska football addict, and I'm a Republican, and I'm a conservative, and I'm a public official for a time, and I could name 15 or 20 identity markers that matter for me. There are some of those that if I get them out of order, there's something really wrong with me. I love Nebraska football. I'm the son of a high school football and wrestling coach. The only job I've ever wanted, and really the only job I still want, is to be offensive coordinator for the Huskers. I told Nebraskans when I was running, I'll do this job for 6 years if you give me this calling, but I'm putting an asterisk on it. If the athletic department calls and I can be a grad assistant helping call plays for the offense in Lincoln, I'm out of here. I love football. But if I ever thought that football might be more important than my duties as a husband or a dad, I'm a messed up dude. And I'm a conservative, and I'm a Republican, and I'm an American. If I ever thought that my commitments as a Republican to small government were more important than my commitments as an American to limited government, I'm not good at either of them. C.S. Lewis used to have the line about the woman who loved her cat so much she started to think the cat was God. And he said, she doesn't just have bad theology, she actually can't even love her cat. Because she can never properly understand this creature. She doesn't understand anything about how it relates to the larger order of things. Your cat's going to die. And in the same way, as a Republican, as we all are in this room, it's really critically important that we can distinguish between limited government and small government. I believe deeply in both. But it is not un-American to disagree with my view of the minimum wage. If you're for a medium level of government intervention in the economy, and I think that will harm more people than it will help, which I do believe the data shows, I have to be able to defend the right of somebody to believe in a $15 minimum wage, economically destructive though I think it is. That's not near the core of my identity, and it shouldn't be near the core of yours, though we should advocate persuasively for that. Limited government, on the other hand, is part and parcel to what it means to be an American. When I teach civics, when I get to be in schools all the time, I make kids think about an island surrounded by an ocean on this side of the whiteboard and an island surrounded by an ocean on that side of the whiteboard. And if you want to explain American exceptionalism to your kids or your grandkids, put rights and government as the two labels on the island and the sea, and then reverse it on the other side. Because this is all that American exceptionalism means. In the history of the world, almost everybody believed the island was your rights and the sea was the government. The government came first. The world is a broken place. We're sinners. There are people who want to take your life and your liberty and your stuff, and we need government. We need order. We need private property rights and predictability. We need security. For you to raise your kids well, you need to not be afraid every night that somebody's going to break into your house. Government is necessary. But because government is necessary, people used to say, well, the king is there, and might makes right. And so I'm glad we got a king, and since we do, we better figure out if he wants to grant us any rights. And so the island were the enumerated rights that the government gave to you. And if the government didn't give you the rights, the assumption was you were prohibited. The king decides whether or not you get a charter to start that new business. And the passive assumption is prohibition, not permission. The American founders came along and they said, this picture is completely warped. It turns out we believe, and this is what it means when Margaret Thatcher says we're a creedal nation, we believe that 7.2 billion people across the world are created with dignity in God's image. We believe they have rights by nature. And we believe government is our shared project to secure those rights. Government is a tool. And we need government. But we are the government. And we decide what powers we give to the government. And that's why in that clip that we showed a little bit of, that's why I said that the Constitution is a negative document. The Constitution isn't going to tell you how to be saved. The Constitution is not the most important thing that's ever been written, but it is by far the most interesting and important political thing that's ever been written. And it's extraordinary that it's a negative document. That's why the American founding is so fascinating and unique and exceptional in human history. American exceptionalism is not us saying we're better than other people. American exceptionalism is us recognizing the historical reality of how amazing it is that we're blessed to live in a country where our founders were the first people to say, government doesn't give us rights. Government is our project to secure rights that we have pre-politically. And so the picture we should draw is the island and label that government. And the ocean is all of your rights. And so we, the people, give the government power, and that's what the Constitution is about. The limited and enumerated powers that we, the people, give to the government. He said, what are you talking about, Sasse? The government doesn't give us any rights, and the Constitution is just a negative document? Isn't the Bill of Rights glorious? Isn't the Constitution about the Bill of Rights? This is the civics that we're forgetting to do with our kids. It is fundamentally critical as an American that we understand why the Bill of Rights are not in the Constitution proper. That was on purpose. And we gotta all know this, and we gotta teach it to each other and to our kids and to Democrats. Because this shouldn't be something we divide with them over. We should come together with Democrats and say, you too love America. And so you need to understand this fundamental thing about America, which is the government doesn't give you any rights. But lest we be confused, the founders agreed on a compromise in Philadelphia in 1787 and 1788, and that is that they would list a bunch of the most important rights just as a didactic measure. And so they said, this is not in the Constitution. The Constitution is about us, the people, giving the government the limited powers. The people have the limitless rights, but let's go ahead and name some of them just to